Hello and welcome to the Right Click Save podcast. I'm your host Calcio, joined as always by my fellow host Jimmy T, and alongside us in the garage today is the animation director at Doodles, Alfie Motion.
Yeah, we've been really excited to get Alfie on the show for a very long time now. We met him at NFT NYC. We've chatted to him a lot. Obviously, we do animated doodles here, so there's a bit of synergy between us. And he's also another guy from the UK.
Was a brilliant episode as well because I think it gave us a real insight, similar to when we recorded with Evan, into the back process of one of the NFT space's most prolific projects.
Before we jump into the episode, we are delighted to announce that we have secured our first partnership for the podcast, which allows us to continue to bring you high quality content on a more than weekly basis.
Here's a little bit more information about Moniverse.
Moniverse is an art-based project that uses the power of NFTs to hone in on cultural experiences and bring them to the forefront of your reality. Their aim is to really connect communities from across the globe via the most iconic monuments and champion artists and the legacy that they can create. Moniverse gives holders a unique experience in which they can travel back in time to see what man's greatest creations look like upon conception via an immersive educational experience that displays history, art and culture with guided tours by their AI-powered historical guides. The first drop will actually be live as of the 11th of November and features the stunning Arch of Peace in Milan, Italy. Following episodes will continue to grow and expand the Moniverse and allow holders access to in real life events that further grow out their understanding of the incredible world we live in.
Let's get into it. Alfie, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the Right Click Save podcast today. Obviously, we met you at NFT NYC at the Doodles event, and we've been chatting to you for a little while now, so thank you very much for joining us. I want to get straight into it, really, and find out what it was that got you into animating in the first place. Forgetting the kind of doodle stuff for a minute, and what was the kind of genesis story for Alfie as an animator?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on. Obviously, I know it's taken us a little while. I've been promising it for a little while, but it's definitely good to chat to you guys about everything. I got into animation from a really young age, so I was kind of like... I was a bit of a nerdy kid back in the day. When I was kind of 13, 14, I started kind of getting into the YouTube side of like editing video game footage and kind of getting into like the software that way. So that's how I kind of got to grips with After Effects and started to like learn my way around, you know, using a computer and using like Photoshop, After Effects, Cinema 4D, all that kind of stuff. So that very much shot me into like the world of animation and just like really wanting to pursue that as a career. So I've known, you know, I've wanted to do it from such a young kind of age. I'm 26 now, so I've been doing it for, you know, 12 or 13 years. So it's pretty crazy the kind of journey that I've come on, you know, so far. I went off to uni and did 3 years there, studying animation and motion design. I got a job at my local like video production house. That was where kind of I learn all the kind of initial tricks of the trade, and then there's a company called Cub Studio who are really, really renowned in the UK for producing, you know, really stellar animation work, and I landed a job with them straight after uni, and worked with them for like 3 years. So that was really the kind of thing that got me properly kind of set in the animation world. I'd say the creative director there, Fraser, is just an absolute world-class creative, and he kind of taught me a lot of what I know today in terms of character animation and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey in the lead up to Doodles, that's for sure.
That's very cool. How did like the Web3 and NFT side kind of integrate in, or how did you get involved with that, and how did that, do you find that sort of changed your kind of career and your recognition of what you do?
Yeah, definitely. Like the Web3 stuff, obviously, you know, I feel like it hit everyone kind of like a ton of bricks in in kind of late, you know, well, actually it was like 2020. It was around sort of late 2020, I think, when I started figuring it out. It kind of started because, you know, we were hearing about it a lot in the studio, and there were a lot of other animators who were kind of putting some really early stuff out. Beeple was kind of the very first person that I remember seeing make that kind of stuff, because from a kind of creative point of view, You know, I don't know how long you guys had known about them, but, you know, prior to the kind of big boom in 2021 and stuff. But, you know, from a kind of creator's perspective, Beeple is like the sort of holy grail of you know, creators, and he was kind of that very first person that I saw was kind of doing it and doing really well from it. So I had a lot of friends around me at the time kind of say, you know, oh, you should look into this NFT stuff. Like, it's really interesting. It's kind of what a lot of creators are doing, and it seems like something that could be really cool to kind of get into. And yeah, at the time, obviously, my understanding of it was, if you're an established artist like Beeple was at the time, then, you know, it's going to be really easy for you to make it in NFTs, because that's what it seemed like the kind of money was coming from. It seemed like people wanted to buy into like artists, right? They wanted to buy into people who were producing amazing work, people who were putting out, you know, cool content. And so whilst I had somewhat of a following when I first found out about it, I think my you know, my instinctive thought was to reach out to Scott, which was really kind of what got things started. Scott is Burnt Toast, for those listening. I think like I kind of saw from afar how well Scott was doing, and I'd worked with him previously, obviously. And so yeah, it was really that partnership that basically kicked, you know, everything off in my sort of Web3 journey.
Do you think that, and this is, I always like this sort of question, because I think it kind of is a testament to your character in this example, right? You've chosen to go back to him and said, look, you've got this skill set. I want to apply it to your work and make something happen as a pair here. Do you think he'd have gotten into NFTs at all, or would it have been something he'd done a lot later, do you think, if you'd not given him that early prompt?
It's an interesting one. Like we joke about it quite a lot, and we talk about it a lot because you know, I was the one that kind of, you know, very much pushed him in that direction. And you know, I think that he would have found his way. I'm sure, like somebody would have probably approached him at some stage. But yeah, like the reason me and Scott even know each other is because I actually reached out to him on Instagram about two years ago, and that was just to animate some of his work, you know, for fun, to put up for free on Instagram. So it was like, that was really kind of how our relationship got started, was like making these like fun little pieces. And so as soon as you know, the NFTs came along, it was like, oh, we could like do this and actually make some money from it. You know, it's like doing what we've loved to do for the past few years already. But yeah, I think it's funny. I think he would have definitely gotten into it, but I'm obviously really glad, you know, that we managed to form the partnership we did, and our creative kind of, you know, the way we work together is just like, it's really inspirational. We've had some really big creative eureka moments where we've both just been so amazed with some of the work that we're producing. And yeah, it's a total it's a really great partnership for sure.
And how do you guys work together? So, like, for example, if we talk about how did the train animation come about as part of that relationship? How much sort of creative input does he have, or do you give you a thesis and kind of run with it? Or?
The train animation is an interesting one. That's kind of what really kicked everything off for me. You know, when we kind of did that train animation, and we'd had thoughts to do it for a little while. Our first NFT that we released was the Hourglass NFT. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yeah, very cool.
That was the one that we worked on first. I think at the time that sold for something like 2 ETH. And I remember when it sold, being like, oh, you know, we were on the phone together, like freaking out, like, oh my god, we just sold something for 2 ETH. It was like neither of us could believe it. It was crazy. And then we thought, right, let's try and do something bigger, and so we started working on the train animation. And this was prior to all the Doodle stuff, obviously. I kind of knew that in the background he was working on this kind of collectible project, but I didn't know, I wasn't really involved in it at the kind of early developmental stages. And we put this train animation out, and it just blew up. Like me and Scott have like a running joke just between us, because the day that we put it out, Instagram like totally broke like an hour after we uploaded it. So we have this joke that we kind of broke the internet a little bit, but it you know, knowing that it obviously didn't come from that, but it's it was just amazing to see the response that we got from that. Like, you know, we both had hundreds of thousands of views in a few days on it, and a lot of people kind of praising us for that. So that was really great. And then when we sold that, I think it sold for something close to like 9 ETH. And you know, wow. Again, at the time, that was like $27,000 or something, which it was just totally like baffling. You know, it still kind of is. Yeah. So that just really sparked, I think, a big kind of interest in our work, and an interest in, you know, just some of the stuff we were doing. And yeah, like I say, that kind of led on to Doodles, really.
How does that actually feel, though? Because I'm not obviously an animator, I'm not a creative the same way that you and Jim would be, so I can appreciate from an outsider's point of view that is mental. But having spent 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years, 12 at the time, or however it may be, working on your craft, thinking, okay, it'd be good to be able to do this stuff for free 2-3 years before, and now we're at the point where you're working on shit that's selling for nearly 30 grand.
Yeah, I mean,
how does that actually feel?
It's really hard to explain. Like, it's hard to articulate, actually, because, like you say, you know, this is stuff that I've just been doing totally as a hobby for almost my entire adult life, and like you just mentioned, you know, it was for 3-4 years prior, it was just like I was going into the studio working late, you know, every weekend. I'd be there, and I'd be there first thing in the morning, I'd be there, you know, late at night, and just to produce stuff for Instagram, because I enjoyed, you know, putting stuff out there for people to see. I enjoyed, you know, getting responses from it. I enjoyed inspiring other people. And so this, you know, the NFT stuff, it just totally changed the whole, totally changed the whole game. It just made it took it to that extra level where, you know, it was stuff that we would, like you say, is stuff that we would do totally for free. And so it's a massive blessing, you know. It's like I say, it's really hard to articulate how it kind of feels, because it really is so rewarding. And seeing the fruits of your labor and something that you care so much about is something totally special, you know. I kind of had a thought to myself yesterday that it almost feels like I haven't worked that hard in what I do, because I enjoy it so much that it's just, you know, I know the hours I've put in, but it's so it's so enjoyable to me, and it's such a hobby for me that it almost doesn't feel like I've worked that hard for it. But, you know, obviously I have, and yeah, it's been really great.
What would you say to sort of people in your sort of early position that are trying to make a name for themselves, like as an animator? What was the best way for them to sort of grow, not necessarily even into NFTs, but grow like a following, putting their work out there?
In all honesty, like, you know, the thing that I try and advise people on, because I get this quite a lot, like I get a lot of people message me on Instagram and kind of looking for advice on how they can kind of get to this level. And I think the truth of it all really lies in the passion of it. Like, if you really want to, if you really enjoy it, it will come naturally to you. And I think just by working hard in the sense of, you know, create stuff that you want to create and keep doing it, I think is the trick. Like, it's the same with Scott. Scott's been drawing, you know, since he could hold a pencil, you know, and he can show you early drawings that he's created of, you know, like Doodles characters essentially when he was like 10 years old. So, you know, it's this nature of, you just have to love it, and you just have to continuously push yourself to do that thing and to, you know, hone that craft. And I also think a really big tip that I like to say to people is, you know, land yourself a junior job, because getting a junior job has been, in both the companies and both the studios I've worked for, they've been the two driving forces that have really elevated my animation game. Working around other creatives, you know, working with, you know, big creative directors and in teams of people is so important. So that's definitely a big one for me.
I'm super curious to see where we go from here, though, in terms of the timeline. So we haven't, you have. You've done the train animation. You guys have been working together quite closely on and off for years, and you know that something's bubbling in the background. You know that there is a project somewhere in there. How do we go from you doing these one-off pieces to you becoming the content creator, the lead animator for Doodles?
Animation director.
So
That sounds much better, to be fair. My bad.
So basically, it was like the week before launch. Scott kind of came to me and he was like, we need a trailer. Basically, I think they potentially gone to speak to a studio, but the studio are like, we need like 2 months. It's gonna cost XXX, whatever. And Scott was like, no, let's just give it to Alf. And he kind of approached me on. He approached me midweek and I was super busy with studio work, and he was like, Alf, can you do this trailer in a week? And I kind of like
In a week?
It was a huge ask, but I saw the opportunity, and I'd seen in a lot of the kind of pre stuff that Doodles had been uploading. There was so much hype around Doodles at this time, even from a really low level. Like there was, I think there was, this was like sub 10k followers. It was like super early on, but you could tell there was a real buzz around the project, and there were a lot of people that were super interested in it. So basically I worked non-stop from that moment. I had to go into my office, to my studio job, and animate, for them 9 until 6 every day, but then literally stayed in the office until 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, came back in at 6 in the morning, did that until the weekend, and then just worked solidly right through until the end of the weekend to get it done. And I'm so happy that I did that and put those hours in, because when the trailer came out, it really felt like it was just so well received by everybody, and it was like people seemed to love it basically. So that was really, really rewarding, obviously, after putting in those hours. And then it was pretty soon after that the guys were like, we totally love the trailer, come and be our director of animation. And so it was a pretty early on thing that was decided, and after that I moved on to kind of creating the profile picture animations and a bunch of other really cool stuff. So it all spawned from that week of hard labor.
It's funny for me as well, because I literally go through this pretty much every week with Jimmy, where he is animating until like 4 a.m. and I'm tucked up in bed having a kip or a couple of bevs or whatever it is, and then I used to do so much work on that. But again, I'm not saying, Jimmy, that you should be grateful, but as Alfie said, he very much enjoys his craft, and I think you do too.
I think working 20 hours a day is the kind of life of an animator.
Yeah, that's one thing that you've got to have a crazy amount of patience. It's when when my friends come around, or when people watch over my shoulder, they're like, I don't know how you have that level of kind of just time and patience to be able to put into it, because it is so the technology behind it, it's quite fiddly, and you've got to just really be able to like focus your full attention onto it. So
what's your favorite animation you've done for Doodles? Like you can count the train, I guess, but is there one that sticks in your mind maybe that people don't always focus on, that you really secretly love?
That's a difficult question. It's hard. Like, I think that the trailer, the second trailer, so the trailer for Doodles 2, it was a massive one for me, because even though actually I directed that and I wasn't part of the actual animation phase too much, it's always been a total kind of career goal of mine to direct a really high level animation like that. So to be able to do that at the age I am at, I'm 26, so it's like that's it was just a really, really proud moment for me to kind of see that go from start to finish, and have the idea and storyboard it all, and it was just seeing this beautiful idea kind of come to life was just it was so exhilarating. It was such a cool thing to work on. But from my perspective, like the things that I am the most proud of for content that I've put out for Doodles, I think the Space Doodles project as a whole, from a technical standpoint, but also just like some of the animations in there and some of the different types of spacecrafts that we've got are just so interesting. I think the skateboard is up there with one of my favorites that I've done.
How did that like creative process evolve? So obviously the first time you did like kind of announcement trailer, and then obviously through Space Doodles, where you were having to animate based on like traits and things like that, and then eventually into that massive, epic, absolutely amazing Doodles 2 trailer. How did that sort of working with Burnt Toast evolve through those 3 projects?
Working with Scott, so myself and Scott, we really are a partnership. It's like, that's the best way to describe it. We work totally hand in hand in everything that we do. He has, a lot of say over how animations look, and we work consistently back and forth via Discord just to, on a daily basis, basically, to get everything done to the standard that we have it at. Our kind of tastes and our kind of expectations for these animations have leveled up to such a high degree that everything has to be perfect, and that kind of shows in the way that we work and the way that we kind of deal with this creative partnership together. I think from the early stages, myself just creating the PFP animations through to Space Doodles. Space Doodles was much more of a collaborative process. We spent a lot of time down in Miami during the kind of ending of that, which really, really helps. I think the benefit of myself and Scott, just sitting at a desk next to each other is massively beneficial. Just for the little things, sometimes during the Space Doodles pipeline, it would take a week to get one thing kind of over the line, just because of the nature of waiting for him to respond and then waiting for me to execute it and all this kind of stuff. So having him sat right next to me just really helped, the whole creative process massively. And then leading up to the trailer, it's kind of the same deal. We just, everything that we work on is really done in partnership with each other, and we really direct everything and execute everything on a mutual level.
I've been a Doodles holder now from, I think, within a week of launch, because it just was the right thing to do. Weirdly, it was just one of those projects banged. I missed Bored Ape, I chose not to buy, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to talk about it. But with Doodles, it was like the right time. It was like, fuck, I gotta be in here. And I've really enjoyed the level of community support they've always had. So it's little things like they will always like all of our tweets and stuff like that, which is nice. And I think that what must be kind of mad for you is that it does still have that weird close vibe, but then at the same time Pharrell Williams is part of the project, so like that level of spectrum is insane. And I wonder how, for you as someone who does very much affect whether or not there's a difference in how positively stuff's received, i.e. if you animated stuff terribly, people will be a bit like, what's this all about? But ultimately what you do doesn't directly affect the price of my asset, right? So what I'm trying to get is, I wonder for you how it feels to have all of these things going on. You've got Pharrell Williams being announced, you've got the huge VC, the valuations, all that kind of stuff. Has that affected how you feel you need to work or your processes at all?
I think that it definitely has an effect. I think all of this stuff has happened so quickly that it's almost hard to keep up with it all. Like, there is obviously so much interest in the NFT landscape right now, and there's so many people that are keen to find out about it. And I think that the work I do, because like I say, because it just stems from a place of enjoyment, and because I love doing it so much, I don't think that my working attitude will ever change, however big we may get. But it is definitely kind of more daunting knowing that you have, the eyes of all of these people, watching over you, especially, like you say, Pharrell is now part of the team essentially, and we've got kind of him to work with, and there is definitely a level of kind of more importance, I guess, that goes into it as time goes on and as we kind of scale up. But it's important, that myself and Scott still continue working in the way that we do, and that hasn't really affected anything. So yeah.
How has your friends and family reacted to it? What's the kind of reaction you get? And also the general being in Web3, which everyone normally thinks is just a scam.
Yeah, so I mean, I think my friends and my family are all totally almost as bewildered as I am. It's such a crazy kind of landscape, and it's such a crazy thing to have happened like it did so quickly. I think that that I don't think that we're ever going to see volume really like we saw in 2021 ever again. And so I think that like it's being able to, you know, understand like where the market's at right now, understand like where the whole kind of Web3 industry is, but look at it from a more creative side and be able to kind of, you know, I don't know, just take the negatives from it and not focus too much on them, and try and just focus on what it is that we're trying to achieve. Because I think what Doodles is trying to achieve is so different to what everybody else is trying to achieve. You know, I don't know too much about kind of smaller projects and whatnot, but the way that I see it is, you know, Doodles is really trying to branch out into entertainment, toys, merch. You know, we're really trying to craft ourselves as being a kind of entertainment brand at its very core, like the next Disney, the next Pokemon, the next Marvel, you know. And I think that if you understand Web3, if you understand the like tech that goes into it, I think you'll know that the next big Disney and the next big Pokemon could well be stemmed from a Web3 company. And I think that our IP is so well positioned to be able to achieve that. So like I say, yeah, it doesn't, as long as I keep focused, and as long as like the team at Doodles keeps focused, which we do obviously on such a regular basis, we're so focused on achieving that goal and making sure that we're becoming that brand that we want. But again, that's how I kind of you know, explain it to my friends and family, and let them know that, you know, it's not just because I think, like you say, the NFT industry confuses a lot of people, and because there were so many scams in 2021, I think there's just such a negative stigma around the whole thing. So if you can kind of explain it from more of the creative side, it definitely helps to sell that.
Absolutely. How important do you think animation is to the Doodle brand, and how much is it going to continue to be integrated into kind of everything sort of Doodles has planned?
That's a good question. I think that, so I mean, Scott's work, you know, it really is the absolute driving force behind the Doodles brand. His style, his color palette, you know, it's nothing like I've ever really seen before, and it's so simplistic. And I remember like seeing like hate comments on the Doodles page when it first launched, and people were like, I could draw these, you know, with my eyes closed on my left hand. and you know, when you work with Scott so closely, you realize his work it's so refined, and it's funny because it does look so simplistic in nature, and the curves that he uses and the way that he illustrates is, you know, it is very simplistic in a way, but I mean, I can't even begin to explain to you how much of an expert level you have to be at to draw like that. It's so difficult. And so his creative is really the main driving force behind the Doodles brand. I think that I kind of add the cherry on top. That's the way that I like to look at it. I think, you know, the animation really brings out the kind of joy in people when they get to see, you know, the Doodles come to life and they get to see the Doodles world in motion. I think it's a really exciting thing that does spread that joy that, you know, Doodles is quite clearly wanting to spread. But with the overall creative, I think it's Scott that really brings it out. And I think going forward, I think I'd like to see animation, you know, kind of built into Doodles the whole way through. I want to make sure that we're incorporating it. There's lots going on behind the scenes that I can't obviously talk about, but animation is definitely a big thing for us, and we want to make sure that it continues on in the brand vision for a long time.
You obviously made us. Very politely asked us to send you a content doc before we did talk, because you're very worried about doing an Alfie and giving us some Alfie, which we're not going to ask for. We're not going to ask for you to sort of say what's going next, but
it's a bit of a running joke internally that I'm like known for saying too much when I shouldn't, or tweeting things that I shouldn't. So I just wanted to make sure that I definitely kept my mouth fully shut on any matters that I should be talking about.
We'll have to send the episode to Evan for approval.
Yeah, exactly.
But with maximum vagueness as required, is there anything that you're working on that you can give us any information? Tiny amounts, anything.
Just a pixel or two.
Yeah, give us anything.
Um, in all honesty, no. I would love to be able to, but there really isn't. I think everything takes such a long time to get from that kind of initial phase through to the point where me and Scott are truly happy with it. Like I say, it's such a meticulous process that really takes time to craft, and I think like that's basically, you know, what a lot of the kind of behind the scenes stuff is at the moment, is just we're really focusing on, you know, world building and making sure that all the content we put out is top class.
There was this wasn't on the content plan at all, actually. This is just out of left field here. So talking about the content plan. But obviously Doodles got a little bit of stick, didn't they, recently, about not kind of tweeting or kind of engaging a little bit on the socials. Did that make a difference in the team, like in terms of was there some more thoughts on what the approach to the social media was going to be after that happened?
Yeah, again, I probably shouldn't like say too much about this because it's not really my area to speak on. But we knew it was happening. Obviously, you know, it's like we were aware, but at the same time, you know, we have reasons. There are, you know, I know the guys went on the podcast with Juicy and Kat, and they kind of explained stuff just after we announced the valuation, and there was kind of a big discussion in there about kind of why we went silent and kind of how we're going to be moving forward. And obviously ever since then, it's, you know, we've been putting out content weekly, so we're really trying to up that side of it, I know, but again, I don't want to be I want to be cautious. I don't want to spread too much false information.
Yeah, no worries.
That was very diplomatic. I like it. He's unfortunately learnt. It's just what bloody ages to come on the podcast. Now he's actually PR trained.
It was the one hard hitting question was the one I left off the content plan. I stealthed it in there.
Yeah.
What I'm really interested though, from a kind of personal point of view. Obviously, right now, super intertwined with Doodles and doing a fantastic job. But any plans to ever do a solo piece or a solo collection or anything like that?
I've done a few solo pieces before, but they were it was super early on. It was like not anything that I'm like really too happy with. At the moment, it's like I would want to put a lot more thought into doing, you know, a kind of solo piece if I was going to do one. But to be honest, you know, it is my main focus to be very much available for Doodles right now, and that's kind of where my creative priorities lie. And so no, I don't have any plans to do a collection or anything like that anytime soon. I'm very into this whole Doodles world and trying to make sure that it receives the best possible attention that it can.
I like it. I mean, for me, as I said, it's all good news when you come on and I can hear that you're very supportive of my main asset. I love Doodles. I always have. It's been, for me, it was really wanting to find a project that I thought people would give a shit about for longer than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm a collectibles dealer. I always have been for a long time, and I looked for IP. That was always my entry into the NFT market, was to find IP that I thought could be strong enough to at least present itself on the, as you said, on that world stage of saying we could be massive. Have you, whilst you've been doing all your animation things like that, did you get much into the NFT side of it, i.e. buying, selling, losing extortionate amounts of money?
Not really, to be honest. Myself and Scott, we're very similar in regards to it being quite new to us, you know, when it all kind of first got started. And so I'm speaking for myself, but I never really got into the kind of selling and trading, and you know, it worried me too much. I've never really been like a gambling person. I've never really liked to take hits, and it kind of just worried me too much that I was gonna lose money. And so I didn't really ever get into it, to be honest. The only things that I've collected outside of Doodles were Invisible Friends, which and I've got a DK piece as well. But again, those two are things that link to the animation world. Obviously, Motion Marcus, who is like one of my idols. He's a guy that I really, really look up to in animation, and he obviously is the creator of Invisible Friends. So I had to have one of those. But yeah, other than that, it's just it's all Doodles for me, pretty much.
Yeah. It's so cool. It's been awesome having you on. Obviously, I do motion graphics for the podcast. We're animated, and to have someone that puts out work to your kind of quality and standard, to be able to actually chat to you face to face in the garage about your craft has just been absolutely awesome. So thanks so much for coming on.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and obviously from my point of view, it's been amazing to actually have another of the major Doodles players on the pod. We want to kind of complete the quartet.
Get them on,
so I'm going to need that burnt toast link up ASAP, and then we'll complete at the end. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me, guys. Yeah.
Thank you, Alfie, man. And yes, obviously we've been the Right Click Say podcast. I'm Calcio, joined by Jimmy T as always. We do lots of lovely podcasts. You should listen to all of them. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back next week with someone else fantastic.